I never thought a simple knock on my door could change my life, but that night it did. My father had taken up fishing every weekend ever since marrying Jessica, my stepmother. Somewhere along the way, I'd become a sideline in his new life. Often left at home with her. We weren't close, but we weren't hostile either. Jessica was the kind of woman who always carried herself with quiet grace, gentle, soft-spoken, the kind of woman men found peaceful and women either envied or distrusted. That evening, the house was unnervingly still. No television humming in the background. No clatter from the kitchen, just the faint whistle of wind through the half-open windows and the steady ticking of the wall clock. I sat in my room, having just finished sorting the last stack of documents for a work presentation. I was about to clear my head with a YouTube video when I heard its soft, uncertain knocking. I turned toward the door. No one was there. Then, a voice almost a whisper. "Lucas, are you asleep?" It was Jessica. I opened the door and there. She stood, her hair loose, falling around her shoulders, her thin robe draping her like silk. Her eyes were faintly red, as if she'd been crying. "Are you okay?" I asked. She smiled, barely. "Can't sleep. Mind if I sit with you for a while?" I nodded, awkward but unable to refuse. She stepped inside and sat on the chair by the window. The nightlight cast a strange glow on her face, soft but not warm. When I was younger, I used to sit with my mother on nights like this. We'd eat cake, talk about everything and nothing. But now, staring at Jessica, staring out the window, there was only silence. Her sadness filled the room. Something in the air felt suffocating, like I was holding my breath without realizing it. Then she turned to me. "Lucas," she said quietly, her gaze locking onto mine. "What do you think of me?" The question startled me. "What? What do you mean? Are you afraid of me?" I shook my head, confused. "No. I'm very approachable, you know." She let out a soft laugh, airy and almost bitter. "Approachable. It sounds dangerous, doesn't it? No one ever dares to say it." She stood and walked toward me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, not gripping, just touching. "I'm sorry if I'm making you uncomfortable," she murmured. "It's just been a long time since I've had someone to talk to. Do you understand?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure I did. A few minutes later, she left without saying goodnight, without even a proper goodbye. Just a look I couldn't decipher. I couldn't sleep that night. The faint pressure of her hand on my shoulder stayed, with me haunting me like a song stuck in my head. The next morning, Jessica was different, cheerful, humming to herself as she cooked breakfast, as if nothing had happened. She didn't mention last night, and I didn't dare bring it up. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the memory. 3 days later, when my father left for another fishing trip, she knocked again, this time twice, before opening the door without waiting. "Do you like movies?" Looked up from my computer. "Yeah, why?" "I just downloaded an old one. Not very famous, but really good. Want to watch it with me?" I hesitated, then agreed. The movie was haunting, beautiful, sad. But what I remembered most wasn't the film, it was her hand, resting on my thigh during a silent scene, not caressing, not moving. Just there, as if it belonged. I couldn't tell if she was testing me or reaching for something she couldn't say out loud. And worse, I didn't know what I wanted her to mean by it. When the movie ended, Jessica didn't acknowledge what had happened. She simply stood, gathered her things, and said, "Thank you for sitting with me. Sometimes just having someone there is enough." Then she left, leaving me with nothing but questions. That night, sleep came late, my thoughts looping like a broken tape. And when I finally drifted off, I dreamed of Jessica sitting in that same chair by the window, only this time she wasn't. Crying, she was smiling, and it was a smile I didn't know how to read. Emotions are strange things. They don't crash through the door with noise and drama. They seep in slowly, like rainwater through cracked walls, until you're soaked before you even realize it. After that movie night, Jessica stopped keeping her distance. She appeared. More often, always with excuses. "Do you want to eat? Can you help me adjust the curtains? Could you check the TV remote for me?" All things she could have done herself, but she always knocked. And every time I opened the door, I realized I wasn't doing it out of politeness. I wanted to hear her say my name. Lucas. Her voice stretched it out softly, almost wistful, like she was calling to someone from the past. Then one rainy afternoon, she knocked again, holding a small metal box in her hands. "Do you want to play a game?" she asked. I raised an eyebrow. "A game? Truth or dare?" "The adult version," she smiled faintly. "Not the sexy kind, more like escaping my sanity kind." I agreed, not sure why. We sat in the living room, the lights dim, each with a glass of red wine. Jessica handed me the box filled with folded slips of paper. "The rules are simple," she explained. "If you pick truth, you answer honestly. If you pick dare, I give you a challenge. No skipping turns." My pulse quickened. Something in me felt as if we were standing at the edge of something we shouldn't cross. My first turn, truth, as the paper read. "Have you ever truly loved someone?" I smiled, embarrassed, then nodded. "Yes, once." But I never said anything. Not because that person doesn't belong to me. Jessica looked at me for a long time, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. Then she picked dare. I had to think of a challenge, but my mind was blank. Finally, I said dare. "To tell me a secret no one knows." Her eyes softened, like the surface of a lake after the wind dies. She took a long sip of wine before speaking. "When I was 18, I lived with a man 16 years older than me. My teacher thought it was love. But really, I was just something he used to fill the emptiness in his marriage." I froze. Unable to speak, Jessica's gaze dropped to her glass. "Back then, I thought if I was good enough, obedient enough, kind enough, people would keep me. But some people just want something they can fold away when they're done." The game ended after a few more rounds. No one won, no one lost. As I stood to clear the glasses, Jessica's voice stopped me. "Thank you, Lucas," she said softly. "It's been a long time since I've been the one answering questions instead of being the one people watch." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. That night I couldn't sleep. Her story replayed in my head, slow and unshakable. A part of me pitied her. Another part wanted to protect her, wanted to be the one who didn't fold her away. 3 days later, Jessica avoided me completely. No knocking, no quiet smiles. She drifted through the house like a ghost. I felt a growing ache in my chest. On Friday, my father returned late from a conference. Jessica had been home all day, shut in her room. I passed her door, hesitated, raised my hand to knock, then froze. "Come in," her voice called softly, as if she already knew I was there. I opened the door. Lavender scented the air. The desk lamp cast a warm glow over her as she lay curled on her side. Her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes rimmed red. "I was going to knock," said awkwardly. "You don't have to do that anymore, right?" she replied. I didn't answer. She sat up, pulling the blanket to her chest, her silk nightgown slipping against her skin like liquid silver. "You know, Lucas," she said quietly, "sometimes people aren't tired because of their bodies. They're tired because of all the things they have to pretend not to feel." Her words weren't just about her. Jessica patted the bed, gesturing for me to sit. I didn't careful to keep a reasonable distance. She looked at me for a long time, then spoke again, almost a whisper. "I used to wonder, if I disappeared one day, would anyone even miss me?" I swallowed. I would. My voice was soft but steady. Jessica smiled faintly, her eyes glistening not with tears, but with something deeper. Loneliness. Longing. "Maybe you're better than I thought, Lucas." Then gently she took my hand. Not tightly, just enough for me to feel her warmth, her pulse, steady and inviting. I knew I should pull away, but I didn't. I squeezed. She tilted her head, her forehead resting on my shoulder. No one said anything more. We sat like that, twalinly people, leaning against each other in a house too quiet to be safe. When I got up to leave, Jessica pulled me back with a soft voice. "Stay just 10 minutes, I can't." Sleepy hesitated, then sat back closer. This time she rested her head on my lap, as if it were an innocent gesture, but my heart didn't think so. 10 minutes passed then. 15, then 30. No one slept, no one closed their eyes. I put my hand on her hair, touched it lightly, not on purpose, not calculating, just an instinctive reflex. She said nothing, and neither did I that night. I dreamed of a door just ajar. I went to open it wider, but another hand held it back. I couldn't. See the other person's face? I only heard the question from behind the door. If you go through, are you sure you'll be able to come? Becky woke up in the dark. It was just me, and the sound of the wind outside the window. Jessica had gone back to her room the next morning. I found a small piece of paper under my door, handwritten in blue ink. There are things that should only stop at feelings, because if we go any further, we might lose the last precious thing, trust. I took the paper, read it over and over again, then I put it in the drawer, not daring to answer. I don't know what made her write that, but something inside me was both relieved and disappointed. We were almost in love, but almost is sometimes the furthest distance between two people. It was an autumn night. It wasn't raining, but Awazmi father was away longer than usual, a 3-day business trip. Jessica saw him off tow the car with a light hug and her usual gentle smile. No one looked at Menno. One asked anything. Everything was so normal, almost fake. The door closed. Started silence, filled the room like water. I didn't leave the room until nearly 1:00. My stomach was hungry, my head was heavy. When I went down to the kitchen, I saw Jessica standing in front of the window, the yellow light reflecting off the bridge of her nose and cheekbones. She was wearing a long black silk dress, no makeup, but still so beautiful that it made my heart skip a beat. She turned around smiling. Angetaire, you hungry? I nodded, speechless. She pointed to the table. I baked cheese bread, not sure if it's to your liking. I sat down feeling like this scene wasp arranged. She didn't eat, just poured wine this time, a darker red than usual. I ate. Slowly she drank. Slowly, neither of us spoke much, but our eyes kept meeting. I finished. She stood up holding a second glass of wine. Do you want to go up and watch a movie? She paused for a moment, just sit for a while. I stood up, nodded. She didn't lead me to the living room. She went straight to her room. I hesitated. She looked back. It's okay. I trust you. A simple sentence, but it made all my defenses collapse. The room was the same as before, the smell of lavender and yellow lights, but tonight there was something different. I sat down on the chair by the window in the same place. Jessica sat by the bed, turned away as if considering something. Lucas eyes. Have you ever thought, what else could we be besides the roles we play? I paused. My heart was pounding. I don't know, I said honestly, but I know I want to protect you. She smiled a sad smile. No one needs to protect someone like you, Lucas. You're not the one who needs saving. Then she stood up, stepped closer, very close. It could smell the soft scent of her hair. Not perfume, but the scent of human skin, the scent of a pillow, the scent of a night with no way back. She lifted her hand, placed it on my chest. No pressure. Intention, just a touch. I put my hand on hers. I don't know why. No calculation. We stood there like that, like two souls trying to close their eyes and cross the boundary. Then she said, "Can I hug you once?" I nodded. We hugged for a long time, for a very long time. No one said another word, but when I was about to pull away, she held me back with her hands, her breath, her eyes, and this time I didn't stop. I don't remember what I remember, whether pan being pulled into a whirlpool. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. Everything was hot, blurry, and smelled of flesh. I didn't say anything. It was just breathing, skin touching skin, and our eyes never leaving each other. When everything calmed down, she lay beside me, her head resting on my chest. The light from the nightlight created a warm glow around us like a silent picture frame. She said softly, almost inaudibly, "If tonight for the last time, would you regret it?" I clenched my hands. A chill ran down my spine, but I answered no. I only regret not coming sooner. She didn't answer, but her breathing was soft like laughter, like approval. I fell asleep, without realizing it, but before I closed my eyes, I saw a small flashing light in the corner of the room, a faint red light like a flashlight or a camera. I woke up at nearly 6:00 a.m. to the faint sound of my alarm clock ringing through the half-closed door. Jessica was gone. The sheets were crumpled, still warm, but there were no other traces, as if last night had been a dream. I put my shirt back on, walked out of her room, my head still reeling from what had just happened or was happening. It felt strange. The feeling of being seen. On my way back to my room, I glanced across the elephant room. The kitchen light was still on, and on the bar yesterday's glass of wine was still half full. I touched I-tend. It felt cold, which meant she wasn't asleep, or had been awake for a long time. I was about to turn away, when the flickering light appeared again in the corner of the room between the Bluetooth speaker and the fake flower vase. It was a small red dot, very small, but I wasn't mistaken. I moved closer, crouched low for the first time. I saw clearly a mini camera, the kind you can buy online, disguised in the speaker. Red flash verifiant. I took a step back as if someone had just punched me in the face. I went back to my room, locked the door, sat down on the bed, trying to piece together the details. The first time she said, "Stay focused." 10 minutes, the time she told sad stories. She always chose a time when my father was away observant. Eyes and mouth camera. Jessica knew what she was doing step by step. Jessica barely appeared all day. I went to the kitchen, didn't see her. Went to the living room. Everything was neat, clean, even empty. It was evening when I was sitting by the window when she came back in. Her hand was a paper bag from the bakery, milled slightly by the macaroons. "You like?" I nodded, not looking her in thigh, but I felt something change. The warmth was gone. Instead, there was a terrifying alertness, like someone who'd just finished a roll that night. Jessica didn't call me down for dinner. She didn't knock on the door. She left me alone, but I couldn't sleep. 2 o'clock a.m. Emmy walked out into the hallway. Her light was off, but the crack in the door wasn't tight, as if it was deliberately left open. I stood there for almost a minute. I felt as if behind that door someone was waiting for me to step into the trolley. Didn't. I just left a small piece of paper tucked into the crack of the door. Was last night real or a test? No response the next day. When I woke up, the piece of paper was returned, folded in for neatly placed on the desk in my room. I opened it. A single line in familiar blue ink. "You answered yourself, didn't you?" I shuddered from that moment and started avoiding Jessica. I avoided all eyes, all hints of contact. I wasn't sure where I went wrong, but I knew one thing. I was no longer in control of this history. The following weekend, my father returned earlier than planned. He had a new fishing gear and was in a good mood, but when he saw me, he frowned. "You look so skinny. Are you eating properly at home?" I was about to nod, but Jessica stepped out and interrupted. "Yes, he is. It's just he's been a bit moody lately, staying up late, not sleeping, like he's hiding something." Her voice was as light as cotton, but it full on my chest like a stone. My father looked at me for a long time, without saying anything more. That night, while washing the dishes, I saw my father pick up the phone, mumble something, then look at me, I guess. Jessica said something behind my back. Part of me wanted toss cream, another part just wanted to disappear. After finishing dinner, Jessica poured my father another glass of wine, then smiled at me. "We should be more careful about what happens in the house. Everyone has cameras now, right?" I almost dropped my glass. My father just laughed, thinking it was a joke. Only I knew it was a silent reminder. That night, I removed the camera from my room, one I never knew existed behind the curtains, hidden in an old electrical outlet. No batteries, just a wire led outside, or just a scare. I don't know. I only net one thing: I was being recorded. And Jessica was the one running the show. 3 days after that last dinner, I received a text message from an unknown number. "You think I don't have any friends in school? Good job, you're a stepmother." I stood there frozen in the hallway of the dormitory. My hands were shaking like Simeon with malaria. My heart was pounding in my chest. A video file was sawdushed. I didn't open it. I didn't need it. I knew what it was an hour later. I was called into the office by the academic supervisor. The room was cold. The light was white. Two lecturers sat across from me. No one smiled. No one asked, "We need to clarify something, Thivas." Principal's voice hit like a sledgehammer. "Because it has affected the reputation of the school and the learning environment." I didn't argue. I didn't deny it. I just sat there. The video didn't show my face, but it showed the situation, showed my voice, and it showed me. No one asked why there was a camera. No one asked who was filming. They just asked me, "You did that to your family. Do you know what the law says? Do you know how old you are?" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Every word that came out of my mouth was hooked, pulling blood. When I got back to my room. The suspension email was waiting for me. No mercy. I called my dad. The phone rang 6 times. Then he picked up. Is it true? No greeting. No inquiry. Just a cold, steely sentence. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say you're being set up. But my throat was dry, and he knew I heard a sigh, a long, suffocating sigh. Go home. Now I stood in front of the house at 10 p. Miyasika opened the door. No surprise, no anger, no nothing. Still look Thappers through me as if I were someone who longer existed. He's in his officia voice. Was even like she was reading a script. My father sat at the table, theolite on his hands, on a file. His eyes were red, maybe from crying, maybe fromanger. Sit down, I sat. Do you have anything to say? I opened a mouth, but all that came out was a weak whisper. I didn't know the Kamara was there. A beat of silence, then he asked, when did it start? To answer it couldn't be, he nodded very slowly. Jessica said you were the one why and I dictated it. She didn't want this to continue, but she was threatened. Waste that, right? I jumped up screaming, what did she say? He raised his hand, sit down and don't make a fuss. I looked at him, my whole body shaking, my throat was burning, my heart was exploding. She's not like you think, you don't understand, he laughed bitterly. You know, people always say that when they have no way back. I walked out, ran, didn't look back, didn't cry, just the wind in my face and a question swirling in my head. Why did you do that to me the next morning? I packed up and left. Jessica didn't see me off. Neither did my father, only the neighbors. Stray dog came and bit my pants and then ran away. No one stopped me. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was I had just been kicked out of my own life. I stayed at an old friend's house in a small room under a tin roof, hot and filled with the sound of a fan. My phone rang constantly. Numbers, the messages were full of insults, mockery, and stalking. No, asked me how. I felt no one asked me what really happened. There was only one sentence repeated over and over again from acquaintances to strangers. You did that to your stepmother. Sick, they didn't know that I was asking myself the same question. Every night, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, as if looking for a crack to fall through, I didn't contact my father, and he didn't look for me. Butone, Saturday afternoon, when I was buying instant noodles at the supermarket near my dorm, I saw Jessica. She was wearing a white shirt, long pants, and sunglasses, looking like a model from the weekend. Newspaper next to her was a strange man with gray hair, pushing a cart full of high-end food. They laughed. His hand rested on her back intimately. I stood frozen at the end of the counter. Not because of jealousy, but because of the realization. She had lost nothing. She had not been criticized, had not been expelled, had not been buried online. All the pain had fallen on me. I should have turned away instead. I stepped back. Jessica. She turned her head. She looked at me. Her eyes were not startled, not afraid, just an indifference disguised as a polite smile. Oh, Lucas, are you okay? Clenched my fists, trying to contain my anger. Why, what? I didn't start it, you're the one. You should be careful with your words. She interrupted, her voice still. Even there are things that without items are just imagination. And if there is evidence, if then they become foolish. I stared at her without blinking. The man beside her began to look annoyed. Jessica tilted her head, smiling as if she were talking to a child. What do you think? I did set you up, seduced you. Are you sure you didn't enjoy every moment with Mayar? Not a victim? Lucas, you're a participant. I wanted to say that. Chef loaned it that she knew what she was doing, but I also knew that if I opened a mouth, I would be the one who lost control, and that was exactly what she expected. She stepped closer, whispering loud enough for only me to hear. Don't best a bit, I know. The rules, you should learn how to survive being dragged. Underwater thun. She turned away gently, elegantly, like someone who had never entered my life that night. I received an anonymous text message, an old recording. It was Jessica's voice, but deeper. Angrier, she said, he may betray me, but I will mock him, know what it means to lose everything, even his most beloved son. I listened to that part over and over again. Each time my heart ached a little more. My father had an affair, had left my mother, had left me like a piece of luggage that no one wanted to keep. Jessica didn't love me. She never loved him. I was just a pawn. A way for her to destroy the man who had hurt her. I didn't know who sent the recording. It could have been her ex. It could have been an accident from some forgotten phone, but I knew one thing. Even if I brought out this tape, I wouldn't be a blotto. Clear my name, because people don't believe the truth. They only believe what they see on the screen. I lay on the tile floor all night. Didn't turn on the lights, didn't eat, didn't sleep in theater. I just repeated one sentence over and over again. It's true, it's true, it's true, but the more I repeat, the more uncertain I become. I don't know who I am in the eyes of others anymore. I left the city a week later, not by choice but by survival instinct. No one spoke to me at school anymore. Friends avoided me. The teacher who had told me I had writing potential now just glanced at me like I was a stain on a white sheet. My inbox was full of anonymous messages, slanderous, collagious, and edited clips that were all over student forums. Some people even secretly filmed me walking on the street, then added the words, "Stepmother is public property" underneath. The school officially sent out an indefinite suspension. The reason was not for ethics bet, because it seriously affected the reputation and safety of the academic community. They didn't need to investigate. They just needed to clean up, and I was trash. I went back to Mimmer's hometown for a while, a small town where not many people knew about the scandal, or if they did, didn't care. I did all sorts of odd jobs to make a living, cleaning the warehouse, helping in the kitchen, installing cable. No one asked me what college I went to. No one cared if I wrote a perfect essay or dreamed of becoming an investigative editor. At night I slept on a folding chair by the window. The monsoon blew through the cracks in the wooden wall. I often woke up at 3 o'clock a.m., not because of nightmares, but because of a feeling of emptiness, as if the tell Lucas part of me had left my body and left behind only a hollow shadow with a name. Sometimes I thought about telling the whole story to someone, but then I stopped. I no longer believed that anyone would believe me, because even I didn't dare believe that I was completely innocent. I chose to stay. I held her hand. I touched her. I fell in love. The price I paid was also because I entered a game with outrolls. The last news I heard about Jessica was from an old friend, a friend of my father's, he said. Jessica is the owner of the house now. Everything changed hands very quickly. I heard your old man sold his share and moved abroad. Live with a new person? The movie is over. My child, I smiled faintly. The movie wasn't over, it just changed scenes. As for me, I was still thinly audience member sitting in the theater after the lights went out one afternoon. I happened to surf the internet on my old phone and saw Jessica appear at a charity fundraiser. She was wearing a white dress, standing in the middle of the stage, holding a microphone, speaking about the value of healing and faith in the modern family. Below was applause. Behind was a poster with the words "Recovering from Trauma, the Journey of a Wife and Mother." I didn't feel angry, didn't feel hurt anymore. I just felt empty. Every morning I woke up early, jogged through the foggy streets, watching the first sunlight of the day shine through the damp leaves. Sometimes I sit for hours by the village pond, watching the fish splashing, listening to the sickers calling their mates. I try to fill my head with new images, new sounds, like people burn incense to chase hosts, but there are stains that are not meant to be washed away. They are meant to be lived with. A year after the incident, I still hadn't returned to school, nor had I applied elsewhere. The degree was suspended like an old shirt packed in a suitcase, not bad enough to throw away, but not clean enough to wear again every time I opened my laptop. I still typed a few lines, not articles, not navels, just short paragraphs, a few imaginary lines, sometimes letters to no one. One day, while I was flipping through some old books in the village library, I found a folded newspaper. On the inside page was a photo of Jessica, now the main guest at the Women with the Power to Overcome the Past panel. She stood among young businesswomen, her eyes full of confidence, her hair neatly curled, her beige dress sun-wrinkled. I didn't read the article. I just looked at the photo for a long time and folded it carefully, tucked it to the bottom of the bookshelf between my notebook and an old map. The next day, I received a phone call from an unknown number, a male voice, Herrero, but familiar. Lucas. I recognized the voice of my grandfather on my father's side. He said he heard the story too late. When everything was done, said my father was living in France with a new wife, and didn't mention me. Said he still had the pictures of me when I was a child. When Estelle called Dad in a clear, round voice, not knowing that one day I would remove myself from the family he invited me. Todia, I agreed that afternoon. We sat under the old bougainvillea trellis, each with a cup of ginger tea and a piece of dry cake. He told stories of the past, how my father had dropped out of school to follow a woman, then returned, then left again. I just listened, didn't ask, didn't blame. You know, Lucas, there are people who are born to live without consequences. They do bad things and then go straight. The rest have to clean up the mess for the rest of their lives. It's the rest who really deserve to live. I looked up. His eyes were dull but not weak. Maybe I was more like him than I thought. That night I went back to my room, opened my laptop, and started typing. For the first time in months, my words didn't tremble. I wasn't writing about Jessica. I wasn't writing about my father. Was writing about a boy named L, a man who once thought he was the main character, but turned out to be just a footnote in someone else's plan, and lived not to win but to tell the story. A few weeks later, I met an acquaintance Sould that I almost forgot her name. It was Hang, a high school classmate who used to study literature with me. She recognized me in the small coffee shop in town where I sat every morning to write wet act. For a while she asked me if I still wrote. I said yes. She smiled softly and genuinely. So you still keep a part of yourself. That's great. That sentence almost made me want to cry, because for a long time I thought there was nothing left of me to hold on to. I started thinking about going back to college, not to reclaim my reputation, but to start over with a straighter head. Maybe I would go to a smaller school, maybe I would work more, but this time I would walk away without anyone holding my hand and pulling me in or pushing me out. Jessica is probably still alive now. She may not remember my name. Maybe she has found someone else to trust and lead me over the edge, but I'm not angry anymore. Not really, because I've seen what's more important. I still have me, not whole, not clean, but still me with what's left after the storm has passed. I met Jessica again one late winter afternoon at a coffee shop on the outskirts of town, where I had come to research for an article on memory and the role of forgiveness. She sat in the deep corner of the shop, next to the window, the sunlight gently slanting through her hair that had a few silver strands. She was still sitting in the same posture, back straight, hands gently turning the pages of a book, legs crossed, graceful and purposeful. In that moment, I was no longer sure if I was looking at a woman who had ruined my life, or a ghost from the past that had never gone away. She looked up, saw me. Her eyes did not widen, her mouth did not smile, but I knew she recognized me. It was still the same gaze, sharp, quiet, not revealing more than accessory. I was about to turn away, but she spoke. Lucas, just one word enough. Tomic, me stop. I walked over, standing in front of her desk. I didn't think I'd see you again. She closed the book, tilted her head. You write well. The article about sin and time has been shared quite a lot. Last sentence is very good. No one suffers alone, but each person chooses how to suffer. I sat down without inviting him, without waiting. You read it all more than once? She said, looking straight at me. You write with pain, and real pain always has its own value. I was silent. Something in my heart was like barbed wire, coiled. No more hatred, but still painful. Why? I asked the old question, but this time I don't need you to deny it. I just want to know, what was I really in thought? Story. Jessica looked at me for a long time, then she put her hands on Theatable, clasped together as if considering something. You are the only person who has ever seen me when I wasn't pretending. I frowned. A chill ran down my spine. Me, but you still filmed it, still released it, still lied, still, because I thought I could control everything, even my emotions. She interrupted. But then you scared me, not because you attacked me, but because you really did. I was speechless. Jessica contend. Back then, I wanted revenge on your father, really, because he betrayed, caused me to lose my first child because of stress, left me when I need him most. And I thought if I took away what he loved most, I would feel relieved. Stared at her, unblinking. My throat felt as if a boulder had been stuck in it. But then I realized you weren't something to tackle. You were the only one who didn't try to possess me. Not control, not define. I could have stopped, but I didn't. And in the end, when things got out of hand, I didn't know who to save, so I saved myself. Silence. No one spoke, no one touched anyone. There was only soft jazz music playing from the ceiling speakers and the sound of spoons hitting glasses. From another table, I used to think I was the one being controlled. I said, my voice low. But later, I wonder if I could go back to that night, would I say no? Jessica laughed softly, almost silently. I wouldn't say no. I would just look a little longer before. I walked in. I looked at her, the woman who had shattered my youth now sitting there, no longer glamorous. No longer a role, just a person, faulty, flawed, and more naked than ever. Jessica put the cup on the table. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold but from something she never put into words. Regret, not loudly, not in tears, just the way her breathing was short, her eyes avoiding the light, her fingers twisting the ring, even though there was no ring on it. Do you want me to apologize? She asked. I shook my head no, because if an apology makes me feel better, then I'm the weaker person, and if it doesn't change anything, then it's just another role. She nodded, as if Shahad expected it. You're right. I'm not sorry, but I remember a long silence. I stood up. Before I left the table, I asked, after all, did you ever love me? She looked up. The light from the window shone on her eyes, a pair of eyes that had once made me lose my way, now filled with the weariness of someone who had carried a burden for too long. Geef. Love is seeing the other person as better than you thought, then yes, but if love is wanting that person to be free, then no. I couldn't love you properly, and nodded. No more questions, no need for anything else. I left the shop, stepping Jinto. The damp winter afternoon, the wind blew into my collar. I pulled up my scarf net to keep out the cold, but to cover up what was blurring my eyes, not tears, Buddha memory that had just been put down light, but deep. On the way back, I stopped at a small bookstore and bought a brown leather notebook, the old snaplock Kindy, planned to write it all down, not to tell anyone, but to keep as a way to remind myself. I lived through this, and I'm still me. Years later, someone asked me, does that haunt you? I didn't answer right away. I just looked at them for a moment, and then said it didn't haunt me. It lifted me up. I don't know how Jessica lived after that. Maybe she got married. Maybe she became a good person. Maybe she never thought of me again. But one thing I knew for sure, she no longer had the power to dictate my story. She had been the storm, and I was the little house that did eyes close now. I've learned to close, not slam, not lock, just close. Properly. Thank you for staying until the end. If you are still sitting there listening to me tell you this story until the end, I want to say one thing. Very slowly and very clearly, thank you, from the bottom of my heart. I know time is the most precious thing an adult can ever exchange. And if you have spent more than an hour listening to a story that is partly ambiguous, partly thorny, and even unpleasant, then to me it is a gift. I do not tell this story to be forgiven nor to condemn anyone. I tell it because there are things that cannot be kept in the heart forever, especially when they begin to speak in the twilight afternoons, the hour that anyone who has lived long knows is when memories often turn. I know many of you, those who have experienced lost betrayal, who know what it means to keep silent to protect someone or yourself, will not listen to this story with reason, but with feeling, with some layer of old memories that you may have never shared with anyone. This story, like all stories, has no absolute right or wrong. It is just a lost life, a question mark in the long book of life, and sometimes just having someone open it up is enough. Once again, thank you, hosts who listen not with their ears, but with hearts that are warm enough to hear and open enough to understand. Wishing you peaceful days, and if there are memories that cannot be named, know that they can still be written down gently, like a letter sent to Silence Team.